Okay. I don't know. I don't think this one needs a surgeon. I think he needs a drama critic. Now, you've seen them firing today, the matchlock musket of the time period. You saw on the display how long it takes to load this weapon. Frequently, they would fire off one volley, then it's useless. It just becomes a club. They would turn it round and they would just use it like this. Now, when you've watched films about the English Civil War, or you've watched films about the Elizabethan period, you've seen muskets with this fish tail shape to the butt. A lot of people think this is just artistic. Well, it isn't. It's shaped like that for a very specific reason. It's practical. And the reason is this. That is designed to smash skulls in. That's its purpose. It's a very practical purpose indeed. So, also, the sword of the time, particularly the cavalry sword of the time, was a long, straight, heavy object that happened to have a sharp edge on it. In fact, there was more blunt force trauma that came down rather than a sharp edge cutting. Now, the job of the cavalry is to massacre the infantry. This poor individual here being an infantryman. There's nothing the cavalry loved more than broken, scattered infantry and good ground for their horses to charge over. They would just charge up and down, smashing in skulls with these swords. So, a surgeon had to be competent to deal with a fractured skull. Now, surgery was always carried out with the patient sitting down. You were not lying down. The belief at the time was if you were lying down, you're that bit closer to being dead. If, however, you're sitting up, you're that bit closer to being alive. So if you're sitting up and screaming, it's considered to be a good sign. So, all we'll do is we need to get through to the fractured skull. So just using a goodly sharp knife, the surgeon would just cut a flap of skin and would then peel the flap back to expose the skull. The surgeon would then use the most sensitive instruments he has, which are the fingers, and he just pull the little bits of bones out. If he could then, like a jigsaw, put the bits of bones back together, that was excellent. If, however, due to the force that had been applied, the surgeon could not pull the bones out, they would use this. It's called a tree pan saw. What they would do is, they would put the saw on the skull, and they would just cut a square hole onto the skull. The pieces would be lifted out, put together like a jigsaw, and put back again. If, however, that didn't work, they did have the tree pan drill, and that would be used to literally just drill into the skull. Now, they weren't daft. They didn't just keep sawing until they were up to their elbows. They had a little measuring device, so they knew how far they were going to go into the skull. Once the hole had been made in the skull, we'd take a gold coin, one of his gold coins, not one of mine. The gold coin would be sent to a blacksmith. The blacksmith would hammer the coin wafer thin, would lay it over the hole in the skull, and would then just nail it on with hammers and nails. The scalp would then be folded over and the skin would be stitched. And now, surgery was considered to be a success if the patient was alive when the surgeon left. If the inevitable infection, the thing was, if you survived the infection that set in, you had a good chance. But if you died 4 days later, that was God's will. Okay, you were alive when I left, so good job, surgeon. There's a lot of archaeological evidence that shows exactly that type of treatment of a fractured skull, where either a Anyone who's done a bit of woodworking? Yes, it's a hand brace drill, that's all it is. Where they've found archaeological evidence of trepan saws and trepan drills. And by looking at the edges of the bones, they can see the healing marks. So that they can see by the edge of the bones, the person lived for a long, long time after that surgery. It was the infections that usually killed. Now, so that patient can be dragged away. Thank you much. Okay, right. Thank you much. Who would like to volunteer to be my... Oh, no.